Ciao a tutti. This is Prof Jo at Prof Jo Explains, and our very special guest tonight is Mark Geragos. I think he could almost go without any kind of introduction at all, but I think that would be a little rude not to at least mention a couple of things. He's handled some of the most high-profile cases over the many years, including a lot of celebrities: Winona Ryder, Michael Jackson, Chris Brown, Colin Kaepernick, and he's got a couple of, I never know whether they're YouTube channels or podcasts, but I think podcast Two Angry Men with Harvey Levin, and another podcast, I believe, Reasonable Doubt, that he co-hosts. And I'm going to bring him on so I can ask him about, I think, the new one that he will be doing. So there you go. The one I'm going to ask you about is, I had Matt Murphy on, and he said you two are going to be doing something together, but he couldn't remember what it was going to be called.
You know why he said that? Matt was being very diplomatic.
I see.
It's called In the Well, which I don't think Matt really embraced as a title. And he might, if you gave him some truth serum or cross-examined him, he'd probably admit it was foisted upon him.
Well, why didn't he fight back? He's an experienced lawyer.
By the way, one of the things about Matt that I love is, unlike a lot of lawyers who I appear on TV with or on a panel or something else, Matt actually was a practicing lawyer. When I first met him, he was a hard charge and homicide prosecutor,
right.
Like my father, down in Orange County, and then a sex crimes prosecutor. And he's the real deal. I loved going up against him personally, but I hated it professionally.
Well, I can understand that. Well, I better give you my bona fides then. I haven't just taught. I took a sabbatical and prosecuted.
Wow.
a lot. I mean, not the experience you had, but I had a great time doing it. I went into the office thinking, they're going to think they've got such a gift here because I've taught. I know this law. I understand how the world works. And boy, the prosecutor just really didn't want me. He thought, here's this, this person who's not going to be able to say 6 words that a jury can understand. And I told Matt this at the end of I was there about 1.5 years, I guess. At the end of the time, the prosecutor offered me a full-time position. So I thought, he's learned that at least one law professor in the world can speak English the way other people do. So.
Well, one of the things I tease Matt about often is that it's not exactly a high bar. Don't take this personally, to be a prosecutor. I've often said I could teach a 4th grader how to ask the question, what happened next, what happened, or then what happened. But Matt gets very angry about that one.
I bet he does. Well, I wanted to ask you, Geragos and Geragos, is your daughter the other Geragos on the name of the firm?
Well, my daughter is I'm very proud of my daughter. I told the story. For those who don't know, I sat last year in the audience in the Southern District of New York and watched my daughter deliver the opening statement, cross-examine some of the witnesses. I thought to myself, Professor Jo, if my grandmother, who had my father, who is the other Geragos, or was, he's been gone now for a decade, but if his mother, who had him, she didn't know if she was 14 or 16 because she had escaped from a Turkish orphanage and had him when she somehow made her way to Chicago. If she could have seen her great-granddaughter and what she had achieved in America, she would have just
very proud.
Been
very, very
proud as her father is.
Well, that's the American dream,
Certainly is. It certainly is.
Great. Okay. I'm going to start out with a question. When was the last time you did a 5.5-hour closing?
I have a closing tomorrow as we tape this. This is Thursday. It's a court holiday in California. My closing tomorrow, I'm limited by the judge to 90 minutes.
Have you ever done one that went 5.5 hours?
Oh, I've done ones that have gone 6 hours over 2 days. I've done one 7 hours over 2 days. So yes, I tend to only want to do that if it's a case that is just incredibly complex,
of course,
and 8 or 9 months to try. You don't get as many of those anymore. I mean, those are
The reason why I ask is the Canero trial, the brother who's accused of murdering his brother's family. The defense lawyer went 5.5 hours, and then so did the prosecutor. And that was not a 8-month trial, and it is not one that, in my opinion, had complicated issues that needed to be discussed. And I spent a lot of time, as law professors do, complaining about it.
Well, I don't disagree. One of the things, I was just explaining this to some lawyer in my office. I have a belief, and it probably, I need to retool it, but for much of my career, I used to think that people were conditioned because of TV to think in terms of their attention span of 25 minutes, which was the average length of a half-hour show without commercials, or 50 minutes, which was a drama, 5-0. Anything over that, I thought people lost their attention span. Now in this kind of YouTube era, there may be an argument against that, although there are those who tell me, look, podcasts people will listen to for 3 hours. So that might undercut my theory. I just tend to find if you're giving people information and you're interesting and intriguing about it, they'll listen. If you're
not repetitive.
Yeah, and you're not repetitive. There is a degree to which you have to be repetitive in terms of themes, but not repetitive in terms of beating somebody over the head with something.
Yeah. Well, I think the people in the chat today will be happy to hear you say that, because there was a lot of chatter about this is going, when is it going to end? But anyway, that was Canero, which is
Well, I will tell you, Professor Joe, that
call me Joe, please.
Okay. And not Pro Joe. So
no, not Pro Joe. Has too many connotations.
Well, I have a nickname for reporters who I compare to being kind of prostitutes for the prosecution. I call them pro-hos, so I will not go that far. But,
I don't think YouTube won't like it. You should know that. And you're starting a third program.
Exactly. I'll get demonetized. I've seen some of the most effective closings I've ever seen have been 17 or 18 minutes, where somebody just went in, they hit what they needed to hit, especially on the reply closing. So depending on who has the burden of proof, and my father used to say, I don't care what the case is, just give me the reply closing. Whoever's got the burden of proof goes first, the defense goes second, and then you get the reply. If you do a tight reply that's 12, 15, 17 minutes, it's very hard to lose the case.
Yeah. Unless the facts are really against you.
I don't necessarily think that's the case either. I think if you're in trial, although I will quote a judge, I don't know if he's around anymore. I haven't seen him in years. Judge Alec Williams used to say a trial is to determine who the asshole is. But
it's not the defendant.
Yeah, it's not the defendant. I that was my other joke. The only people who lie more than the defendant are the prosecutors and the jurors.
Oh, Matt must love talking to you then.
Exactly. We have very spirited conversations.
I bet.
By the way, how the podcast came to being is Matt and I were at a event together, and we were in a green room waiting to go on stage for this event. And somebody listened to us tell war stories about our trials in the green room and said, you know what, we got to make this into a podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. War stories are great. I used to tell law students all the time with regard to their, let's say, angst in a classroom, sure, suffer through this. This will give you cocktail party conversation for the rest of your life. It's a payment you have to make, but you're going to live on it forever. So,
well, the first thing when somebody hears I'm a criminal defense lawyer is the first question I get in social gatherings is, how do you sleep at night if you know somebody is guilty? The old saw. And my response, which is almost reflexive, is I sleep fine. It's when I know they're innocent that I lose sleep. So
Yeah, then you have to really feel that the burden's on you, right? Well, that's a good segue. I wasn't going to go here first, but I will. The Murdaugh conviction and the appeal yesterday, which I watched the first issue and then didn't watch the first. They bifurcated it, so they did the Becky Hill stuff first, then they took a break and came back to do the financial stuff. And the right reason why I say that's a good segue is it seems to me that's a case, at least in my opinion, there is, let us say, substantial evidence against him that he committed those murders. But the Becky Hill issue, which is the court,
The elected court clerk who went in and
yes,
needed to help sell books.
yes,
To get
and it's a really perfect.
And in full disclosure, Dick Harpootlian, who tried that case, is I consider to be a very close friend, fellow Armenian, and I thought tried a hell of a case. And if there was ever a case that should be reversed, that's one of the things about the criminal law and any justice system is you have to have, when you have a jury, a sacrosanct ability of that jury to deliberate without interference. And jurors, for the most part, are not professional. Jurors, yes, you get jurors who have prior jury experience, and yes, you get jurors who bring things to the table. That's why it's such an incredible system. But the idea of somebody intruding into that, I think, is just verboten. And I think that I've seen cases reversed on a heck of a lot less than that.
I couldn't agree with you more. And it also was pretty clear the justices were very concerned with that, but they were also quite concerned about the way the justice, former Supreme Court Justice, Chief Justice in South Carolina, had limited the interviews with the three jurors. One, she didn't take any testimony from at all, and she was just, it seemed to be very inconsistent about how she did it. I can see, although she didn't put a lot in her opinion, I can see what her theory was. But the justices had quite a bit of trouble with it. So much so.
Right. I don't blame them. I remember in real time watching what she did in that hearing. I mean, for those who weren't in the weeds, she was appointed in essence as a special master, somebody who was supposed to conduct, you can't normally expand the record, but in this case, they wanted an expanded record, obviously, because of the allegations. And what she did at the time, I just thought, this is outrageous. And so I'll push back on you, the question back on you. Don't they order I think what they would do, they were troubled enough to order a more expansive hearing with more directives in terms of taking new evidence, with obviously, I think it's how insulting, but with a new bench officer.
Yeah, I'm my guess is they'll do at least that much if they don't just outright reverse and start all over again. It was really interesting because you would think, since she's a former Chief Justice of that court, and some of them I think sat with her, that they would have at least, did a little bit of a genuflection about how she did it and then move on. But boy, there was not a word.
Wasn't that
not a word?
That was incredibly refreshing. That was my worry. The cynical, speaking of my father, he used to complain about, in the Ninth Circuit, judge a couple of years ago used to say, the symbiotic relationship between the trial court and the prosecutors. And so I worry about, writ large, the symbiotic nature of having a retired justice who sat, as you aptly pointed out, overlapped with some of these. You worry that there was going to be a deference that you shouldn't have in the justice system. Boy, but my instinct and cynicism was not well placed.
Yeah, well, it might be that they just were so unhappy with how she handled the hearing that any inclination they might have had to go that way was overridden by their dismay at the way the hearing was handled, how she handled what evidence she was going to hear, what evidence she wasn't going to hear, conclusions she made about which juror. I thought it was really cute. The jurors, what was it? Was the egg juror, juror 741, and juror Z. And I thought you could at least do letters, do numbers, do, I don't know, vegetable. What are eggs? I don't even know what they are. But I mean, it had three
Animal,
different
vegetable,
categories.
mineral, right?
That's right.
Well, my experience knowing Dick and I've spoken years past to they have a joint bar association, Carolina Bar Association. It's wonderful. If you ever get invited, you should go. It's a very tight knit and a robust bar. And my guess from the outside looking in is that they were dismayed because they were literally, it was kind of one of the periodic trials of the century, as you know. And I think there was a lot of commentary and pushback, and it made it look kind of backwater. And that is not the way that bar, in my experience, or that judiciary should be viewed, but it really was skewed. And she had the moniker of former Chief Justice, which carries an incredible amount of weight.
Of course it does.
But she certainly didn't do the title any justice.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you that your friend, it was an interesting oral argument. I had actually never seen trial lawyers do the appellate argument in their own case. I wasn't familiar with that at all. But he was different from virtually every oral argument I've heard, and I've heard a lot of them, because he referred to the 16th century and he quoted Lord Cook, and it was a pleasure to listen to it.
Well, Dick is talk about a Renaissance man. I mean, he's been a state senator, I believe. There, he's a writer. I did not the foreword, but I did a book blurb for him. He's been the subject of a TV show. He's got interests outside of the law. He's just a wonderful man. And if anybody, I periodically will do that. If I lose a case and I feel strongly enough about it, I will follow it on the appeal, especially if it's a non-capital case. Capital, you can't do it. I just think as a matter of law, you can't, because you've got to leave open the IAC question. Yeah.
Well, the prosecutor was there too. Didn't use the Attorney General's office. It was just a surprise to me. But okay, let's talk about it. Go ahead. Sorry.
That prosecutor was something. We could do a whole show on that prosecutor.
Anytime. But our little, what they call a thumbnail, which I've just learned to say thumbnail. I was calling it the little picture.
Right. Thumbnails. I'm with you, Joe. I as many of these as I've done, it took me 10 years to understand what a thumbnail was.
Well, and I'm not all of it is. I mean, I don't know what the right verbs are, what the right nouns are. I mean, I really feel as though I'm swimming up, or maybe climbing a mountain would be the better way to say it.
It's a Sisyphean role of the.
That's right. But I did say that we would talk about a couple of the current cases, so we better at least do something like that, so I don't get accused.
So which of these current trials of the century most intrigue you? I would love to hear what your.
I guess so you're throwing the question to me, huh?
Yeah, I'm gonna. What?
I'll tell you what. It's a case that I didn't even list, and that's Spencer, Aaron Spencer. The father who shot and killed the man 67-year-old man who had taken his daughter twice and molested her twice. And that one intrigues me because I cannot understand on the facts how the prosecutor can charge second-degree murder on that. Unless they're facts I don't know about. That one just intrigues me because I cannot work out. I mean, normally I can disagree, but I can at least sort of figure out how they got there. That one, I just don't have an explanation for.
I've had this talk countless times with prosecutors. There's a certain calculus that they do. You rarely see a prosecutor charge a voluntary manslaughter right out of the box. You rarely see that. I had a murder case 2 months ago that resolved after a long period of time for an involuntary manslaughter. And in my opinion, it was never a murder case. It wasn't because I did such a great job. It was just clearly from the facts from the get-go. If you read the reports, you'd say to yourself, how did they even charge this? I mean, it was a self-defense on its face. The deceased had done everything possible to antagonize the neighborhood and my client before he was unfortunately killed. But the prosecutor said, look, if we think it's a crime, if we get over that self-defense kind of barrier, then we always charge it as a murder. They just rarely, unless it's something else like a industrial accident or a construction accident where there are something where they're trying to elevate a negligence to a gross negligence and get to an implied. But what they do is they justify it on this implied malice theory, which I think is unconscionable in some respects, but I get it intellectually.
Yeah. Well, I don't. I mean, I do intellectually, but I don't, because, putting you know this much better than I, charging somebody is a huge, huge act by the state that really upends their lives. And to do it on facts like that, where I'm not even sure that should be charged, frankly, as I understand the facts.
And one of the things, and by the way, I think you could use your example as a kind of teachable moment, so to speak, on one of the problems with the criminal justice system. When you charge in most jurisdictions murder has a life consequence, meaning we call it in California a lifetime. So if you get charged with second-degree murder, it's 15 to life before any enhancements. If you charge manslaughter, either involuntary or voluntary, it's a determinate sentence. So you know what you're going to get. If it's involuntary in California, it's a 2, 3, 4. If it's voluntary, you've got I think it's 3, 7, and 11, or 3, 9, 11. But it's determinate. What that does is, as a defense lawyer, you have to tell a client, if you roll the dice and go to trial and don't take a plea, you are facing a life if you get convicted versus a determinate sentence where you can make a calculation as to when you're going to get out. And I will tell you, even though I violated my own promise to myself, back in 2017, I had a 17-year-old kid in a vehicular death case where they charged implied malice murder on that case. No under the influence, nothing like that. Excessive speed was the allegation. I could never get an offer for a 17-year-old kid of less than 13 years and 9 months. And we had to go to trial where he was facing second-degree murder and facing life as a 17-year-old tried as an adult. And it made my stomach turn every morning, not just for my client, but putting the family through, the victim's family as well. It's a horrific situation. It robs you of part of your soul, literally, as you try the case. And I swore I was never going to go do that again. And sure enough, I took another one just recently. So,
yeah. Well, the prosecutor has more power in the system than anyone else.
Oh, they trump, pun intended, the judge like you would not believe, because judges, especially in federal court, I don't know why the federal judiciary allows it to happen, but even after the guidelines became advisory, federal judges still are pretty much hamstrung by the charging decisions of the DOJ.
Yeah. Well, and that Spencer also, for another reason, just intrigues me, and it's the judge who was taken off the case. Who, again, I mean, I guess I expect more from our public officials, prosecutors and judges and court clerks and everyone else. And it troubles me greatly when we see, I mean, I know we don't see all of them, but when one comes forward and you look at it, it's just really troubling.
Well, you remember did you follow I think it was called Young Thug, Brian Steele was involved, who was one of my daughter's co-counsel in Diddy. And that judge there took a witness into chambers unbeknownst to the defense and literally threatened the witness. And then when Brian found out about it, the judge threatened to hold him in contempt. The judge who committed the misconduct was threatening the lawyer because the lawyer found out about it. And then my friend Ashley Merchant had to go to the Georgia Supreme Court to get it, not only vacate the contempt citation, but remove the judge from the.
I saw those hearings. I actually saw the judge the day that he, at least one of the days where he threatened the defense lawyer about it.
You say to yourself, how does this happen? And by the way, if this is what happens when they're on camera, what happens when they're off camera?
Right. Which is why I think not only should all trials, obviously they're public, but we should allow the cameras in.
I agree. I do not understand, especially in the federal district court. How is it that I can go and watch I can go down the street to the Ninth Circuit. I can watch in court or I can watch online. But if I go by my office to the federal district court in the Cube, I can't watch a trial. It makes no sense to me.
Right. And I think actually it goes both ways. One, it gives oversight of the people into malfunctions or things, malfeasance that's happening in the court. But it also, I think, would give people confidence in the way the judicial system operates and the way courts operate and how defense lawyers operate if they could actually see it. Because what you think you know and what actually happens can be so far apart. Well, so from both sides, I think we should have them.
I agree. I remember 25 years ago, I had a case where I joined in the prosecution to keep cameras out of the courtroom. I thought that would tamp down interest in the case. It had just the opposite effect in retrospect. It just allows speculation. It allows urban legends to generate, and it's a mistake. I just think I think that if the public saw, and I think it holds accountable to all the participants. I think, number one, it's good for people to be able to see what's happening in there. It holds judges accountable. I mean, there's so many judges that carry the water of the prosecution in criminal cases and have an obvious bias. And I think it would be good to have that seen. I think there's defense lawyers who, equal opportunity, who shave corners and shouldn't and should be held accountable as well. I just think it's something that would be very helpful.
So we should go, get our little red caps and go out and be revolutionaries about this. By
the way, in this era of true crime and content creation, it's only a matter of time. I just saw where Dan Abrams' Law and Crime Network, although I think he sold it, bought Court TV. And the irony of that was Court TV used to be the behemoth and Law and Crime was the upstart. And Law and Crime, which is now a digital kind of a property, is bought Court TV because they want to bring Court TV in to the new modern era. I think the same thing is going to happen with trials. You're going to see that becomes the content that people want to consume.
Yeah, well, I certainly want to. So
you certainly do. I mean, I'm sure you'd be a superstar at CrimeCon this year.
Well, thank you. I'm thinking of going, actually.
Well, I would encourage you. I did it 2 years ago. I was invited.
Well, I know you'd be a superstar. I mean,
it's like a Disneyland of true crime. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. So, well, let's talk about a couple of these cases. I'm sure you're following at least the media stories on Nancy Guthrie.
I am. I watched that. I know in passing her daughter, and my heart goes out. And it's. I think that the video that was released is terrifying to anybody who watches that.
I agree with you. Do you have any instinct about what might be going on there? I mean,
I do. I had thought a week ago there was another home invasion in that vicinity, and I thought that at the time I said I don't think that's a one-off. I think whether it was a mistaken address or whether it was, as I've seen law enforcement down there say, you know, you'd be surprised at how often these kidnappings take place because it's so close to the border. I think it's one or the other, but I also think they know a lot more and they will reveal a lot more. Maybe, I don't know when this drops, but my guess is that they knew about that video and they had that video a lot sooner than when they released
what
it.
they're saying. Yeah.
And what they're saying. And they also have a couple of investigative techniques that they're not revealing. I know from outside independent contractors who I've used in trials that they're a lot farther along than the public knows.
Well, I hope you're right. My impression watching it, and I worry about jurisdictions where it doesn't appear as though they do a lot of major crime. They have a lot of murders going on, and you get inexperienced law enforcement going in at the start, and then they don't call in more experienced people. And, you know, if things screw up at the start, it's pretty hard in a trial and easier for the defense, even with someone who is, you know, clearly responsible.
The fact that they got Google to turn over that footage when there was no subscription, I'd tell you, if I tried to do that as a defense lawyer, yeah, the mother of the judge hasn't been born. They would have poo-pooed me right out of a courtroom. I'm not feeling real sorry for law enforcement. When there's this much attention on something,
they get help.
They get help.
They get help.
They're going to get, and that also, to my point about the independent contractors, there are people who have, I know for a fact, who volunteered their expertise and have been helpful so far.
Yeah. Well, I'm really pleased, but it also, you know, you would hope that, you know, cases like this, where it isn't a major, you know, media presence and it's a relative, gets this sort of attention when you don't need, who knows how many other cases where the help would also be much appreciated and needed, and it doesn't happen. Now, I know we live in a zero-sum world and there's only so much money and there are only so many people who can do it, but it still troubles me. I mean, I'm happy it's happening here, but, you know, it troubles me.
Well, it's going to trouble a lot of people, hopefully, when there's a happy ending, because it's going to raise the bar on what people will assume law enforcement can do. And hopefully there's a happy ending. I would say cautiously optimistic when I saw the second tape that the family did, that they had some proof of life. And obviously we're only speculating because I don't have anything independent, but the way that they talked gave me some reason to hope.
Well, I hope so. And I hope it's resolved soon. It's just hard to contemplate. But you're right. The videos of the perpetrator going in. I mean, if I met him on the street, I think I might be pretty worried. But to see him in your home,
well, and to approach and back and forth. But I think there's a lot of hope because of that video. So I think they're going to get to the bottom of it if they haven't already.
Well, being a non-techie, I marveled at the fact that you didn't have to have a contract or a subscription, and yet it was still in the cloud anyway. I mean, I was just so impressed.
Well, people were saying, I get a kick out of people were saying, I remember doing a show about a week ago, and they're saying, yeah, you can't trace the Bitcoin. You can't. I said, boy, you have not done a federal criminal case recently, because if you believe that, you are the most naive human I've ever met, because I have seen stuff in discovery, in other unrelated cases, about where the government is at this point in terms of the surveillance state that would frighten you, basically. And I was reminded when they captured or swiped Maduro down in Venezuela, they talked about the disabling eardrum devices that they had, where they could disable his security with this high intensity thing. And I say, if you think they've got that, that's just the tip of the iceberg for what they're able to do in terms of reverse engineering and technologically being one step ahead.
Yeah. Well, what about Monique Tepe, Monique and Spencer?
Yeah, I don't know what to make of that. I really am kind of perplexed. I actually, when I agreed to do this, I think I told them I wanted to get your take on it because I haven't been following it closely, but it's fascinating to me in a maybe in a morbid way. But
Yeah.
what's your take on it?
Well, I'll start out saying what bothers me a great deal is the demonstration of if you get involved in the wrong relationship, and if you're not really careful about that, and sometimes even if you're very careful, it doesn't matter, extricating yourself is almost it's serendipitous if you're successful when you get somebody like what we think this ex-husband is, because if you cut the contact completely, it may incentivize that person to go after you. If you try to maintain some contact, sometimes that is seen to them as a sort of, come on, you want me to come back. If you maintain more contact, it's the same thing. And picking the right thing to do, and it seems to me in some ways law enforcement can't help, because you can't point to anything that shows that he's doing anything where they can pick him up. And you don't want law enforcement to go picking up people and arresting them on somebody's claim that something is going on, particularly when it's a volatile, relationship. So that's where I start with that. It's so, I think,
Interesting, because
terrible.
that's kind of the fundamental problem that the judges who I know who sit in restraining order courts have. The behavior sometimes is extremely troubling, but does it cross the line to where they can issue an order? And they struggle with that. And I watch that, and I've defended those, and I brought them, and been on both sides of it. And it's as you, I think, very astutely analyzed it. It's a puzzle of human nature that is sometimes not easily put together.
Yeah. And the idea that 10 years later, he's still obsessed with her in a way that he's still stalking, he's still apparently writing. There was a story that they were at the Big Ten football championship. Monique and I guess Spencer both are Ohio State grads, and Ohio State was in that championship. And she leaves at halftime, and Spencer tells their friends that something happened. It was her ex-husband, and she was upset and left. It's, I mean, I don't know. I don't think I know people like that. I mean, I can't swear to it. I don't think I know people like that.
Because you don't have a private practice.
That's true. That's true.
I'm the opposite. I know too many people like that.
Yes, but you don't invite them to your dinner parties, I'm assuming.
Apparently,
we're talking about a different kind of no.
Yes, they make me a recluse. What can I tell you?
But it seems, I mean, you may feel differently. It seems to me if you're in that situation, you can act as reasonably as possible and make all the best choices possible and still end up where they ended up, because you've got this nut on the other side.
Well, this is not based on that situation, but just based on experiences I've had them where somebody has not done anything, and there's been a perception that they have, and every kind of crazy conclusion that one could paranoid draw from the situation is drawn, and then you realize you're dealing with somebody who's just truly unhinged, and that's a frightening prospect. And that unfortunately I've seen that too often. I keep telling anybody who will listen, I think it was one of the unfortunate byproducts of the COVID shutdowns is it really exactly, in my experience at least, and I know that I see kind of a bizarre cross section anecdotally, but it certainly, the COVID shutdowns, at least in my experience, amplified mental illness and mental health challenges.
Yeah. Well, I think we're too socially distant from each other now, and I don't think it's a net benefit at all. in a lot of ways. I saw it in law students,
I agree.
you
I
know,
couldn't
and
agree
it's a different level. I mean, it's their ability to interact socially and know just kind of the social niceties that you don't get when you're not seeing people face to face. Plus, you know from texting and everything that it's so much easier to say things in a text that you would never say face to face with someone, that you're more cautious, you're more careful. Yeah. And
no. And that's the biggest problem. And there's no
Yeah.
nuance in it.
Yeah.
It becomes more, I don't, abrupt, I suppose.
Right.
And maybe, and sometimes unintentionally, which is not
Right.
good. Which is
Right.
not a good thing.
So if you start out, we know that as the baseline, then someone who's unstable and there's more social distancing and less possibility of interaction. I can't imagine it that, that you're not exactly right. But
Yeah.
that does raise Nick Reiner,
Yeah.
because
And
those were parents who were in exactly this situation.
And the thing about Nick Reiner, in fact, I was talking with someone who's intimately involved in the case just this morning, and and fortuitously also a prosecutor on a parricide case that I had handled many years ago. It's not. I don't think it's a generalization. I think it's a fact to say that if somebody commits that kind of act, they clearly are out of their mind in whatever psychological kind of characterization you want to make of it. And I've handled these parasite cases before, and you don't get well, and it can be amplified by drug use. It can be exacerbated by drug use. But when you get to that depth of psychosis or psychological disablement, then to think and to take that step, it's just a line that I don't think you ever get back from.
Yeah. And I mean, again, it's another situation in which the parents, who tried everything, at least from the public reports, tried everything to help him, were unable to do it.
I represented many years ago, and I got her permission recently to talk because I've referenced her, Mia St. John, who was a heavyweight champion boxer, and she had a son who suffered from schizophrenia and was on the streets. And I watched her in real time, and she was married to the father of her son, who was a soap opera star who's now passed away also. And both of them committed suicide. And I watched her struggle with her son, and I watched just what it did to her. And that constant, just, that parent trying to help their child. And I don't think, unless you have a front row seat to the anguish that the parent goes through, I know that from the cheap seats, it's easy to say, oh, he's a druggie, or oh, he's this, or oh, he's that, or the parent indulged him, or the parent coddled him. That is such a superficial, myopic way to view it. The parents are in it. It's their offspring. It's somebody that they gave birth to in Mia's case. And you just can't even describe the depths of what it does to your soul when your kid is that way. You've heard the expression, you're only as happy as your unhappiest child. And you're only as healthy mentally as your unhealthiest mentally ill child. And you just cannot be dismissive of the parents. I've said that when the DA here in LA came out and said that death penalty was on the table for him, I said, who would be first in line at his door, busting down his door to ask him if he was crazy, would be Rob Reiner. Why? What do you mean you're going to put my son to death for killing me? I know that makes zero sense to somebody who hasn't watched this in real time, but that is the reality of it. And it's a intractable, inexplicable position to be in.
Do you think the opportunity to have someone involuntarily committed should be more available than it is right now, at least in some states.
One of my longtime friends since high school is a guy who's gone on to bigger and better things than playing football against me, which is Dr. Drew Pinsky. And Drew and I, he grew up at the neighboring town here. We've talked about that for years. I live in the vicinity of where a guy by the name of Frank Lanterman grew up. Frank Lanterman passed in California the Lanterman-Petries Act, which at the time in the 70s was relaxed the idea of involuntary commitments. We didn't want to, it came from a noble place. We didn't want to commit people involuntarily, and we wanted to have safeguards against that. Well, like a lot of things, no good deed goes unpunished. It now is at the point where you can't do anything. I mean, coming full circle to Mia St. John, I can't tell you the number of times we wanted to involuntarily commit her son. We wanted to try and do something in real time, and we just couldn't do it. We couldn't get any there, and he ended up dying. And the guy that I had referred to that I represented in the other parasite case, that was more than a decade ago. He still has not been tried, because you're on this endless cycle of, you send them to a mental health facility like a Atascadero. They get medicated. They get that kind of constant involvement of the mental health professional. But then every time they get supposedly competent, you bring them back to the county jail, and they just disintegrate mentally. And then they're incompetent again, and you send them back, and it's an endless cycle that goes on in perpetuity. So it really is almost Sisyphean, speaking of Sisyphean, task to deal with.
Yeah. It's, I guess, it's the human condition. If we were perfect.
It's a perfect way to put it.
That's right.
It's part of the human condition and the human tragedy and everything along those lines. Speaking of a tragedy, I have to sign off because in 8 minutes I've got to put a shirt and a tie on, and I've got to do a remote appearance at 5 o'clock.
Don't you have to prepare for your closing? What are you just going to wing it these days?
I have to get on we still have to deal with the special verdict form. So I apologize.
Don't worry about it. It's a pleasure to have talked to you. I enjoyed it very much. I'm sure the people in the chat did. I'm sure they're regretting. There are probably questions there that you haven't answered. You'll have to come back. We'll store them for you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay. I don't know if you had any questions because I didn't see them come up, but they probably were directed at him, and I'm not sure I could answer any of them. But, I would give it a try if there is anything, a comment or a question that you want to talk about. We will wait a second at least. And so I never did get to Corey Richens, which was the other case that I wanted to talk about him. Thoughts on Casey Anthony, considering how much he lied to law enforcement? That's one that you wanted to give him, I'll bet. I heard him say once that on a program, and I don't remember what the question was, but his answer was he thought that juries, essentially, now I'm paraphrasing a lot, juries, when the evidence was really overwhelming, you'd never be surprised at an answer that they'd come back with a not guilty. And that's a bad paraphrase. And it was a case in which it looked like the evidence was really overwhelming. And he said he always thought that way. And then Casey Anthony's case came along. So that would, if I'm remembering him correctly, that would give you some, obviously, an insight into how he felt about that trial. Yeah, I mean, in general, I think juries, and I think he would probably say the same thing, get things right, or at least they're in the range of what one might say. They're not way out here where you say, how in the world could they have done that? They're within the range of reasonable. I might say, gee, I think that was wrong. I would have decided this way. You might say, gee, I think it was wrong. I would have decided this way. But you can at least see that the parameters are in a world we understand. Every once in a while, you get a jury outlier that's way out there. And I think Casey Anthony is one of the ones that people typically mention as that kind of outlier. You also get one juror. I mean, all the defense needs is one juror for a hung jury, and you get one juror who will not, who is off on her own, I don't know, track. And I'm saying her because I'm thinking of the first trial of Catherine McBanoa in the Adelson trials. And I think most people who are here on the chat now know about them. It was a law professor in Florida who had been murdered, and he, his brother-in-law had, or an ex-brother-in-law at the time, had, through an intermediary, Catherine McBanoa, found a couple of men in Florida, one of whom was a gang member, to come up to Tallahassee, which is where the law professor lived, and kill him. It was a murder for hire. And Catherine McBanoa was the intermediary between the two people who actually did the hit, the brother-in-law who paid for it. And in her first trial, the jury was hung 11-1. And she was quoted as saying afterwards, essentially, that she was a mother. She had just had, I think she had just had a child. And Catherine McBanoa at the time had 2 younger children, that she could not see herself voting to convict someone who was a mother of small children, and to convict her of murder would have meant the children lost both parents. So that was a juror that, in the face of the evidence, in the face of how she could see the evidence, could not do it. Now, she also said that, they needed more evidence on one aspect of it, but I think most everybody thinks it was she just couldn't bring herself to do it. And I think she had been quoted or heard to say that. So you get a jury like that once in a while, and you can't account for it, and they happen, and all you can do is sort of shake your head and, hope that you won't see another one for a while. I don't know if he would have said it differently or he'd have a different take on it, but that's mine. Okay, how do I feel about the Menendez brothers' parents' character being attacked on a moral, ethical level? Well, I have a couple of feelings about that. One, if it is true that they did what their sons claimed that they did, and actually it was the father, the claim was that he had sexually molested both boys when they were boys, and the mother knew about it and didn't do anything to intervene. And the first trial, there were some horrific examples given by the Menendez brothers as to what happened to them. If you believe that those things happened, or at least some of them happened, then how do you go about making a defense or an appeal or saying, hey, we've been in prison a long time now, we deserve to be released, without talking about it? So you can call it attacking the character, but I guess I would say, you don't know what it is. If it's really that the things happened, then I wouldn't call it attacking the character. If it's, I'm going to make this up because it's the best way I can, my best chance of getting out, then of course it's a different picture. But you don't know over here which it is. And so I guess, as much as I don't like it at all, I would say I would not get in the way, even if I had the power to do it, of letting them make the claim. In the Menendez brothers case, I really don't like it, in part because whatever they say that their father did, their mother, there's no evidence that their mother did anything at all. Their claim was she knew and didn't do anything about it. And there are lots of women in those homes where you've got an abusive parent who feel themselves immobilized to be able to do anything. And in those killings, they had shot them. I think the father and mother were sitting on a couch eating ice cream, watching a TV show, and they had shot both of them. The mother was still alive. One of them went out to the car and reloaded the rifle or the shotgun. It might have been a shotgun, and went back in and shot her again. So any claim that they were in fear of their lives, however unreasonable the fear that the father was going to kill them, or that they were, the abuse was such that they couldn't make rational decisions, even if we wanted to say that that should be some sort of a defense, can't run to the mother because she didn't do any of those things. So that's my view on one side. On the other, we have extraordinarily long prison sentences in the United States, and I'm not sure that it wouldn't be better to reassess what we do in terms of how long people serve in prison. But I also believe I don't have. I mean, I guess I could do a rectangle because I've got two sides. I'm moving on to side three. No, that would be a triangle, but I'm sure I could find a fourth side. That whatever the laws are in the place, you have to abide by them. If you don't like them, then go out and get the laws changed. And I really don't like the idea that someone with power or influence or access to the media or get somebody to, take up the cudgels and push their case can get a result that others cannot get. That really does bother me. So, I guess that's three sides. I won't go to a fourth side. Chucky's Chicklet said, not a question, just wants to say that he, she, I don't know which you are. I don't do he, she, by the way. I think I'm probably going to get into trouble here with this aside, but I believe that if when you go to a baseball game, you buy one ticket for yourself, then you're not a they, you're an either a he or a she. And so I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that, but I did. So let me go on here. I'm doing the he, she because I don't know Chucky's Chicklet. I can't tell gender from the name. Look at this. I'm getting a compliment. I went off on this side detour that you love my interview skills and how my mind works. You're hooked on my channel. Well, I am very, very grateful. Thank you so much. I've said before that one of the things I enjoy about doing the channel, I like to hear myself talk, so that's a big deal. And I like to engage with people and try to answer questions, is what I did when I was teaching full time. But what I also like is I get really nice, positive feedback from the chat. And in an Italian family, you don't get any nice feedback. It's only criticism. So, okay, just me, 5544. Great guest. Will I have him back? Well, certainly if he'll come. He's a very, very busy guy. He's going to have 3 podcasts running, and he's still maintaining an active practice. So, but we will certainly ask him. And Patricia Burns wants to know if the book behind me contains Long Day's Journey into Night. It does not, although that is my favorite play by far. That is the updated biography of Eugene O'Neill. There were 2 individuals, one a professor. I don't know if the second was also a professor, and they wrote a biography of Eugene O'Neill many years ago. And then unusual among biographers, they went back and redid the biography and updated it, and that's the updated version of O'Neill. I love Long Day's Journey into Night. As I said, it's my favorite play. I think he's a great dramatist. I think he's the greatest American dramatist. I also think he was probably not the best human being that ever lived. Okay. Anything else? Or are we done? Okay. Well, I think most of you who are here right now know that the jury will start deliberating in Canero tomorrow. Amber is going to come out at 8 when the jury is supposed to convene, and she's going to put the stream on. I'm not coming at 8 because I don't like mornings to begin with. And since nothing is going to happen right away, there's no way that they're going to come back with a verdict 15 minutes after they go into the jury room. I will probably try to get there by 9. And if we can do it, we will move over to watch the sentencing of Juliana. What is it? I'm never going to get her last name. The au pair in the criminal trial that just ended. Her sentencing is tomorrow. She's the one who had gotten a deal from the prosecutor. She's pled to voluntary manslaughter, and the deal from the prosecutor was that the prosecutor would recommend that the sentence would be time served. The judge does not have to adhere to the recommendation of the prosecutor. The judge can accept the guilty plea and then impose a different sentence, and I'm hoping that's what happened. They needed her testimony in order to get Brandon, but what she did seems to me to deserve more than 2 or 3 years in prison. And I'm also hoping, I looked up the law there. I think that's Virginia, if I'm not wrong. I also looked up the law on whether you can write a book or sell your rights and have a documentary done about the crime, and learned that if the family sues, that the money would go in escrow. The prosecutor can recommend to the attorney general that the money goes in escrow so she wouldn't have access to the funds. And I'm at least hoping that the system doesn't allow her to actually shoot to death someone who had no acquaintance with either of them. He was just someone they lured in so they could blame the murder of the wife on him. That she's not, at least doesn't get to profit from it by being able to sell rights to a book or to a documentary. But in any event, we're going to try to move over to there, and that's a 9:30 sentencing hearing. I don't know how long it will last. Her mother, I think, is in Brazil, so I don't know who, if any, will provide a statement on her behalf. They may be written statements. They may come in over Zoom. Some jurisdictions read the written statements into the record, which is what I think should happen. Others pocket them and they're in the record, but they're never read out loud in public at the hearing. So I don't know how that hearing is going to run, but we will try to do it at 9:30. Sorry for the coughing. So I guess since I see no more questions, I will say ciao a tutti. I hope you have a good evening. And now that I learned that hype is so helpful to a new channel, you can go to any of my videos and hit hype, and I would really love you if you did. So, so long, good evening, and I see some of you tomorrow, maybe all of you tomorrow. And if not, whatever you're doing, hope you enjoy it.